Hello, this is Tim from Vintage RC Garage. Today I'm going to try something new. This will be the complete teardown on my Clod Buster Queen project, kit number 5865 in trimmed normal time. I will provide the rebuild and the time lapse in another video. I hope you like it. This Clod Buster I got a while back and it's in pretty good shape. It was a little dusty, the shell was scratch free, the decals were in great shape, and the chassis appeared in really good condition. Okay, let's get started with the teardown. The tires on this kit are huge and heavy. Well, actually, so is the complete kit. Similar to the TXT and other large trucks, the wheels have adapters that lock into the back of the wheel rim with knobs that help everything turn. The wheel hubs are attached with a large step screw on the bottom and the top, and that lets the hubs turn freely. Something you don't see anymore on new RCs is a ceramic transistor. This setup had wires running from the speed controller to the resistor to dissipate the heat from the engine setup. This one, however, was in great condition. The speed controller, like many older Tamiyas, were waterproofed, air quotes, by wrapping the speed controller in a balloon. This one had completely disintegrated. The electronics tray sits on top of the chassis. It's a bit bigger and heavier than necessary for its purpose. I love the dual motor setup. It had a very nice 6-prong connector box that keeps the wires neat and tidy. The previous owner had the wires secured with zip ties, which is always a nice touch. Once the engine wire leads are detached, the wires are ready to be extracted. The front chrome bumper is actually attached to the chassis and not the body. The suspension is overly complicated. The sway bars attached to ball connectors in the middle of the chassis with a metal ball connector and large plastic supports also attached in the middle of the chassis. There are also stabilizers that run into the center of the chassis to limit the suspension movement. Both the front and rear axles have steering rods in order to support the 4-wheel steering, which is another unique touch of this kit. The functional bumpers attached to the front and rear gearbox assembly. These bumpers and guards are fairly flimsy for such a large and heavy truck, so don't expect much protection from these in the event of a crash. Since it's dual motor, the front and rear assemblies are identical. It's deja vu taking everything apart. They each have 4 shocks, a motor, the gearbox, and a bumper. These parts involve most of the time it takes to tear down and rebuild the Clod. The chassis is one large plastic piece. It has lots of screws and ball connectors that poked into it and hold everything together. The chassis does seem to hold up pretty well since the 3 chassis that I have do not have any major damage. The battery holders secure the battery perpendicular to the chassis in the center. It is held in by bookending the battery with the battery ends that actually stick out from the width of the chassis. The front and rear body posts are secured from underneath the chassis with a crossbar. This one had a broken front post I needed to replace. The wheel hubs contain an E-ring that holds it all together. A washer and inside and outside bearings house the drive shaft that engage the wheels from the axle. Be careful when you remove the ball connectors from the arms. 2 of the hubs have a double stacked set of ball connectors, one on top of another. When you get to the one that is a taller hex, do not attempt to remove it. This one sits inside an insert in the plastic. I attempted to unscrew this one and broke the plastic inlay, so I had to source a new one. Always unscrew the standard ball connector first, and then the other one will just fall out. The shocks just pop off if you use the correct torque angle. There are a pair of metal stabilizers that attach from the wheel hub to the gearbox that make the assembly very solid. With the weight of this kit, I am sure these help a lot to keep the parts all in one piece. The gearbox is held together with a load of various length screws. Too many in my opinion. Almost everything on this kit is held together with 3mm nuts, so as you disassemble, they drop out from everywhere as you take it apart. Almost every shelf queen I have disassembled always has some kind of hidden damage. This one had its gears shredded. I had to source some new ones. It's why I always like to tear these apart, even if they look like they're in great condition. This way I know exactly the state of each of my builds and almost always find something that is broken and not exactly the way it should be. The gearbox has a very unusual setup. The screws that hold the axles together have the screw head on the inside of the gearbox and attach with a nut on the outside. 4 of them on each is more than enough. When I disassemble, I try to stay as organized as possible. Screws in one bin, small plastic parts in another, greasy parts needing cleaning in yet another. It makes it much easier to get ready to put it all back together. Everything is exactly the same as the second gearbox assembly. This was the gearbox with shredded gears. The dual motors are 540s, but next to the large size of the rest of the kit, they always appear like 380s for some reason. As I mentioned, the second axle is identical to the first, so to spare you the details of regurgitating the same thing, I'll just let you sit back and watch the disassembly. I mentioned that one of the gear sets were shredded. This is what they look like close up. There are 8 shocks in all. The stock ones are not oil filled and have very little travel, so they don't work all that well with the weight of this kit. If you plan on running it, I would definitely spring for new oil filled shocks that have a lot more travel, and also while you're at it, the ball bearing upgrades, since you never want to tear apart the gearbox once you've got everything packed up and ready to go. The Clod shell is a classic Chevy style pickup with nice chrome details on the bumpers, the roll bar, and the engine intake. The roll bar comes off easily, but it could have been a better design. It comes in 3 parts and is held together with lots of screws and cross pieces. To me, they are not very lifelike at all, which is uncharacteristic for a Tamiya hard body shell to not be lifelike. The exhaust comes off easily, and the sunroof is all one piece that covers the front and side windows in addition to the sunroof, which is a nice little trick so you don't end up losing a separate sunroof. Both the front and rear bumpers attach to the shell with a large metal support. Each corner of the shell contains a very small screw and nut set that attaches to the tailgate and front bumper assembly in the very corner of the shell. This attachment is very fragile since it's in the corner of the plastic hard shell and is a very common area for breakage. Cleaning the parts of a teardown is the least fun but most important step in getting that great looking shelf queen. I've tried a few approaches over the years, but the one that works wonders with the least amount of effort is rinsing everything in Crud Cutter, which is a degreaser. First, separate out the plastics and the metal. Again, why it's a good idea to organize as you disassemble. I do the metal parts at full strength. The plastic parts I do in a 1-to-1 ratio, half water, half degreaser. Go ahead and drop them in, agitate for 15 to 20 minutes, and then rinse off with fresh water and dry them off. That's it, no scrubbing. If they're really dirty, you can hit the tough spots with an old toothbrush, but in most cases that's not necessary. You will be amazed at the filth that comes off. This Clod Buster was not that dirty compared to some of my previous projects, but it still left a dirty wash bucket. Make sure you wear gloves while doing this because after some time it will aggravate your skin. This build didn't require it, but after the cleaning step is where I would normally hit the buffing wheel and then sparkle up the metals and shine the plastics, but I didn't do that on this one. And there you have it. That's all the cleaning and disassembly. It's time to start to rebuild. Thanks for watching my teardown of my Tamiya Clod Buster 5865 Shelf Queen. Stay tuned for the next part of this video where I will do a complete build. Subscribe to my channel and catch all my new exciting content. See you next time.